Potatoes. Are they a high satiety per calorie health food? Are they a high carby food that's going to drive your glucose and insulin out of control? Or are they an ultra processed food found in all the potato chips and all the bags of kind of junk food that is driving an obesity epidemic? Well, we have a new study that doesn't really answer that question, but it looks into potatoes because they can be so controversial given those three different versions, all of which are correct to some degree about potatoes. So let's look at the study. I'm Dr. Brett Scher, the medical director at DietDoctor.com, and this study is called French Fried Potato Consumption and Energy Balance, a randomized controlled trial published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. And, this is I like this trial for some reasons, and I don't like it for some reasons, but here's why I like it. It's a randomized controlled trial. And in nutrition, we get so much nutritional epidemiology. And if you look at potato consumption in nutritional epidemiology, it's not all that helpful. Because one, what type of potatoes are you talking about, right? Are you talking about like a plain baked potato? Are you talking about fast food French fries? Are you talking about potato chips? What type of potato are you talking about? But also, all the healthy user bias that go in with eating different versions of potatoes are going to really influence your outcome. So randomized controlled trials, so helpful. The downside of randomized controlled trials, of course, is that there aren't many patients and it doesn't last very long. So this was 180 people, I shouldn't call them patients, 180 people grouped into three different groups, randomized into three different groups, and the study lasted 30 days. So not a big sample size, not a long trial. But for a randomized controlled nutrition trial, okay, not bad, I guess. Didn't matter what you ate. Everybody just ate the same stuff, except one group had 300 calories of almonds. One group had 300 calories of basically a French fry, but it's this Tater Pals crinkle cut fry. So a little bit thicker cut than your average fast food French fry, but still basically a French fry. And then the third group had the similar ones with some herbs and spices on it. And the question was, if you follow these people for 30 days, does eating almonds or potatoes, in this version of the fries, make a difference for fat-free mass, body weight, and some measures of metabolic health? And the overall answer was, no, it didn't. But let's get into the caveats, right? Does it say, doesn't matter, eat whatever type of potato you want, eat your French fries, doesn't matter at all? No, not at all. It's not what that says. All it says is, in a very controlled setting, in relatively young, healthy people, right? None of these people had type 2 diabetes. They all had normal hemoglobin A1Cs. Nobody had a diagnosis of prediabetes or metabolic syndrome. So in a healthy population, in a controlled setting, so isocaloric, right? You could only eat 300 grams of French fries. You could only eat, I keep saying 300 grams. I mean 300 calories. You could only eat 300 calories of French fries. You could only eat 300 calories of almonds. In that type of a setting, for only 30 days, it didn't make a statistical difference. But there are some other lessons to be learned here. One of the interesting statistics I see in the data is that for the insulin levels, the almond group had a reduction of 1.17, whereas the potato groups had an increase in 0.4 or 0.2. But because the sample size was so small, it didn't reach statistical significance. But to me, that's certainly an interesting trend, suggesting maybe the almonds were better for insulin sensitivity. And in only 30 days, maybe it was just a small enough difference that you needed longer for it to reach statistical significance if it was going to. We can't make that conclusion, but that's certainly something interesting. Also, fat mass was sort of all over the charts here, which is really interesting. For almonds, it was an increase of 231. Potatoes, an increase of 30, but then the potatoes with herbs and spice, an increase of 225, and this is grams. So it was small values, but interesting difference there. Again, when you're dealing with a small sample size, there's a lot of variability. Your ability to detect statistical differences decreases quite a bit. But I guess the big conclusion is that potatoes prepared like this aren't so dramatically terrible that in a healthy population, it's going to send them off the rails, cause them to gain weight, and cause insulin resistance, at least in this type of a setting. Now, here's the question. What if it wasn't a set amount of calories, right? What if it was just out in a free living situation? Because we know part of these processed foods that combine the fats, the carbs, the salts, which French fries can do, are hard to resist and hard to refrain yourself from eating more and more and more. Although interestingly, it's compared to almonds, which were salted and roasted, which also for many people are hard to resist and hard to contain yourself from eating more and more. So in a real world scenario where it wasn't specified for 300 calories, it'd be really interesting to see what happened. Also, what about different types of potato? If it's just a boiled or baked potato that's plain, that's kind of hard to overeat because for a lot of people it's not all that enjoyable, right? And it also is a high satiety per calorie food. Certainly can make you feel full, but that's very different than the processed potatoes. And then from an almond side, what if it was roasted and salted versus a raw almond, right? Raw almonds are a little bit harder to binge on than the roasted and salted. So lots of different questions that aren't explored at all in the randomized control trial, nor could we expect a randomized control trial to look at all of those. But here's the thing. Why am I reviewing this study? Because it's not sort of an overwhelmingly interesting study, I think, when you look at the details. The reason why I'm doing it is because the reaction to this study has been really interesting. One reaction is, see, potatoes are no problem at all. See, it's got nothing to do with French fries. See, is like what this study quote unquote proves, but it's really limited in its scope of proving anything. So can potatoes be a part of a healthy diet? Absolutely they can. If you're insulin sensitive already, if you're a healthy person, if you're physically active and you're adding potatoes to your diet, absolutely can be part of it, especially if they're minimally processed potatoes. If someone is severely insulin resistant or has type 2 diabetes, they may see their blood sugar rise significantly with potatoes, even a plain baked potato. That's where checking your blood sugar or CGMs could be really helpful, because by no means is everybody going to see that, but some people can, and it's important to know if you are that person who does it. So measuring your blood sugar, and if you don't, then a whole minimally processed potato could be part of a healthy diet. But when you get into French fries, salted and fried in oils, or you get into even worse processed potato chips and things like that, that's where you sort of start to cross the line, because those are more hyperpalatable and you can certainly eat those, and those are more likely to have a negative contribution to your health. And I would be much less likely to say that those can be part of a healthy diet. Although if you're in a constrained setting and can only eat a small amount, maybe they can be a part of a whole diet or a healthy diet. But the question is, does that translate to real world scenarios? So that's what I found interesting about this study, mostly the reactions that it's gotten and what the implications are for sort of real world scenarios, which I think unfortunately are a little limited in this study. But interesting that it shows that, if we demonize certain foods, like all swaths of it, to demonize potatoes across the board, from the unprocessed whole potato to the potato chips, that there's a spectrum there, right? And maybe it's not accurate to demonize a whole food like that as well. So anyway, I hope that was helpful. I hope you see this maybe from a different perspective. Please click the thumbs up and subscribe button if this was helpful, and we'll see you next time here on Diet Doctor News on YouTube. Take care, everybody.